The air felt heavy with hurt, like a punch you didn't see coming. For Zoe Harris, a black woman who'd spent her life building bridges for others, the moment she stepped into Prestige Auto in Atlanta was the moment she felt those bridges crumble, not because of who she was, but because of what others assumed she could never be. It was a bright morning, the kind where sunlight bounces off glass and makes everything look possible, but for Zoe, it was the start of a day that would burn in her memory, a day that would spark a fire she didn't know she carried. Zoe, at 32, walked with a quiet strength that came from years of hard work. Her denim jacket was faded, her leggings comfortable, and her sneakers scuffed from running after kids at her community center. She wasn't here to impress anyone, she was here for a purpose. Her youth mentorship program, a lifeline for kids in Atlanta's toughest neighborhoods, needed a new SUV to take them on field trips. Zoe had saved for months, her nonprofit's funds growing from tireless fundraising, grants, and her own sweat. The silver SUV gleaming on the showroom floor caught her eye immediately, a sleek, powerful machine that could carry her kids safely to new places, new dreams. She ran her hand along its smooth hood, imagining their excited faces, their laughter filling the seats. The dealership itself was a world apart from the gritty streets where Zoe worked. Glass walls stretched to the ceiling, reflecting rows of luxury cars, Ferraris, Bentleys, Lamborghinis, each one a symbol of wealth most people could only dream of. The air smelled of leather and polish, and pop music played softly, giving the place a polished, exclusive feel. Shoppers in designer clothes moved through the space, their voices low and confident. Zoe didn't care about fitting in, she was here to buy, her bank account more than ready. What she didn't expect was the weight of eyes on her, judging her before she even spoke. Across the showroom, Greg, the sales manager, adjusted his tie and scanned the floor. In his 40s, white, with a sharp suit and a sharper smirk, he prided himself on reading people. To him, Zoe didn't belong. Her clothes, her braid, her blackness, they didn't fit his picture of a serious buyer. He exchanged glances with two other salesmen, their chuckles barely hidden. To them, Zoe was an intruder, someone who wandered into their world by mistake. Greg approached her, his steps deliberate, his smile thin and cold. He didn't ask what she wanted, he assumed she was lost, out of place, a nuisance. Zoe felt the shift in the air as Greg neared. The warmth of her excitement cooled under his gaze. He looked her up and down, lingering on her sneakers, his expression saying everything his words didn't. He suggested she try the used car lot down the street, his tone sharp, like she was wasting his time. Zoe's heart sank, but she stood taller, explaining she wanted the SUV, asking for details. Greg's smirk grew, his words slow and mocking, as if she couldn't possibly understand the price tag, $250,000, more than most homes. He waved toward the exit, dismissing her like she was nothing. The showroom grew quiet. Shoppers paused, their stares heavy. A white couple in designer clothes watched, their faces curious but distant. Zoe's cheeks burned, not from shame but from a slow-building anger. She'd faced prejudice before, whispers in stores, eyes following her in malls, but this was different. This was public, blatant, a slap meant to push her out. A young black saleswoman, Tina, hovered nearby, her face tense with discomfort. She wanted to step in, but Greg's authority held her back. Zoe tried again, her voice steady, saying she was ready to buy, that her money was good. Greg laughed, a harsh sound that echoed, and told her to leave or he'd call security. Zoe's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone, recording the moment as she backed toward the door. The weight of every eye in the room pressed on her, but she kept her head high. Greg's final words followed her, muttered, but loud enough to sting, saying some people didn't know their place. The glass doors closed behind her, the sunlight outside harsh against her burning eyes. She wasn't crying, though, she was planning. This wasn't just about her. It was about every person who'd been judged, dismissed, or humiliated for their skin. Zoe's video, raw and real, went up online as she stood in the parking lot, her voice shaking with resolve. She wasn't done fighting. Zoe's video spread like wildfire. By nightfall, her phone buzzed with notifications, thousands of views, then tens of thousands. Comments poured in from strangers, some sharing their own stories of being profiled, others angry on her behalf. Zoe sat in her small community center, a cozy building with a mural of kids playing basketball, scrolling through the flood of support. The center was her heart, a place where she mentored kids from Atlanta's toughest corners, teaching them they could rise above their circumstances. The SUV was meant for them, to take them to museums, parks, places they'd never seen. Now, the dealership's rejection felt like a betrayal of those kids too. Her friend Marcus, a local activist with a knack for rallying people, leaned over her shoulder, his eyes wide at the numbers on her screen. The video had struck a nerve, tapping into a shared pain. Black people followed in stores, ignored in restaurants, judged before they could speak. Marcus suggested a protest, a way to make the dealership face its actions. Zoe hesitated. She wasn't one for attention, preferring quiet work behind the scenes. But the sting of Greg's words, the memory of those stares, pushed her forward. This wasn't just her fight, it was for everyone who'd been made to feel small. By morning, the parking lot outside Prestige Auto was alive with people. 60 strong, black and white, young and old, they gathered with signs scrawled in marker, "No more racism, equal treatment now." Zoe stood at the front, her braids swinging as she held a megaphone, her hands steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. Marcus handed her a sign that read, "I belong here," its words bold and unapologetic. A local news crew set up nearby, their camera catching the crowd's energy. Zoe's heart pounded, but she felt the strength of the people behind her, their voices ready to rise. The dealership's glass walls reflected the growing crowd, the luxury cars inside looking smaller under the weight of the moment. Greg watched from the showroom, his face pale, his usual confidence gone. The owner, Linda, stepped outside, her arms crossed, her expression defensive. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that Prestige treated everyone the same. Zoe didn't flinch. She held up her phone, the video playing for all to see, Greg's sneer, his dismissive wave, his words cutting like a knife. The crowd grew louder, their signs bobbing in rhythm to their chants. Tina, the young saleswoman, slipped out of the dealership, her face a mix of fear and resolve. She joined Zoe, standing by her side, her presence a quiet rebellion against Greg's authority. The crowd's energy shifted, stronger now, as Tina's choice showed the truth wasn't just Zoe's to tell. Zoe spoke through the megaphone, her voice carrying over the chants, telling the story of her humiliation, of being judged for her skin, not her worth. She spoke of the kids she served, the dreams she fought for, and how the dealership's actions were a slap to them too. The crowd roared, their voices a wave of anger and hope, demanding justice. Linda whispered to Greg, her face tight with panic. The news crew zoomed in, capturing Zoe's words, the signs, the unity. Zoe's bank statement, printed and held high, showed the truth. Her nonprofit had millions, enough to buy the SUV and more. She wasn't a dreamer, she was a doer, someone who'd built something real from nothing. The crowd's chants grew louder, shaking the air, as Zoe called for change, not just for her, but for every black person who'd been profiled, dismissed, or pushed out. This was bigger than one dealership, bigger than one day. The showdown in the showroom came fast. Zoe stood inside, facing Greg and Linda, the crowd's chants still echoing through the open doors. Tina stayed close, her presence a reminder of the truth Greg couldn't ignore. Zoe held her bank statement, its numbers a quiet rebuke to Greg's assumptions. She'd raised millions for her kids, for their futures, yet Greg had seen only her skin, her clothes, and decided she wasn't enough. Her anger wasn't loud, it was steady, burning with a purpose that filled the room. Greg's face was ashen, his usual swagger gone. He stammered, trying to explain, but his words fell flat. Linda's eyes darted between Zoe and the crowd outside, her authority crumbling under the weight of the moment. Zoe didn't need to shout, her presence, her truth, spoke louder than any yell. She told them how it felt, the sting of being judged, the hurt of being dismissed, the weight of knowing it happened because she was black. She spoke of her kids, how she fought for them every day, how this SUV was meant to carry their dreams. Greg's actions, she said, weren't just about her, they were a symptom of a bigger problem, one that hurt people every day. Linda offered apologies, promises of free cars, anything to calm the storm. Zoe shook her head. She didn't want handouts, she wanted change. She demanded training for the staff, real lessons on bias and respect. She pointed to Tina, saying her voice mattered, that she'd seen the truth and stood up for it. The crowd outside cheered louder, their voices a chorus of support. Linda nodded, promising to act, her face pale with the realization of what this moment meant. Greg stood silent, his head bowed, the weight of his mistake sinking in. A month later, Zoe's community center buzzed with life. Kids laughed as they played basketball, their energy filling the small gym. A new sign hung on the wall, Zoe's youth program, building futures. Tina visited, holding a newspaper with a headline about Prestige Auto's new anti-bias training, a direct result of Zoe's stand. She'd been promoted, her voice now shaping the dealership's future. Zoe smiled, tossing a ball to a kid, her heart full but her fire still burning. She'd bought the SUV from another dealer, one that saw her worth, and it now sat outside, ready for the kid's next adventure. The video had reached 1 million views, sparking conversations across Atlanta and beyond. People shared their own stories, their own fights against prejudice, building a movement Zoe hadn't planned but now led. Marcus, ever her cheerleader, showed her the latest comments, the plans for more protests, more change. Zoe looked at her kids, their faces bright with possibility, and knew this was just the start. She'd stood up, not just for herself, but for them, for everyone who'd been made to feel less. The dealership had changed, but the real victory was the spark she'd lit, the hope that equality wasn't just a dream but a fight worth winning. Zoe's story isn't just hers, it's ours. Have you faced prejudice or seen it happen? Share your experience in the comments or join the fight for justice at stnforjustice.org. Let's make equality real, one stand at a time. Your worth isn't your skin, it's your strength to stand for what's right.